Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching and listening to Historian Radio's Echoes of the News, and I am Muhammad Hussain Qazi, and these are today's headlines from the past. On this day, the 19th of November, in 1850, Lord Tennyson became Poet Laureate. Lord Tennyson happens to be one of the most iconic figures in the history of English literature, whose poems are still remembered, fondly so, to this day. And so his gaining of the title Poet Laureate would truly be a significant date in the history of English literature. Continuing on this date, in 1863, on the subject of great literature and great writings, President Abraham Lincoln delivered his famous Gettysburg Address after the American Civil War with the immortal phrase that government by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Apologies, it seems that my handwriting for the scripts has become my ultimate foil. Nevertheless, on this day when President Lincoln not declared, gave the Gettysburg Address with the phrase that government by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth, was truly a significant moment in the history of the American Civil War, as it brought together a nation that was split and it united it into what is now the United States of America. Truly, a significant date would be unfolding on this day in American history. That is to say, the 19th of November, 1863. Moving forward, on this day in 1960, Pele scored his 1000th goal with a penalty while playing for Santos in his 909th first-class match. Pele is remembered to be one of the most iconic players of the game of football, and so this would truly be a memorable occasion in the entirety of his football career. And on the subject of iconic moments, on this day in 1987, the 19th of November 1987, a 1931 Bugatti Royale was sold for £5.5 million at an auction at the Royal Albert Hall. This would be a record high price for a car to have ever reached at an auction for the time. This would truly be a groundbreaking occasion. As a car lover myself, I feel a bit envious of the buyer that I myself would have neither the money nor the time, frankly, to bid on such a car. Nevertheless, it remains to be one of my favorites. And on that note, we conclude today's headlines of the day, and we now move forward to the next segment of our show, where we recount the famous births and deaths of famous figures from the 19th and 20th centuries and sometimes earlier. Born on this day in 1600 was Charles I, King of England and Scotland, who believed the king ruled by divine right, until his action in dissolving Parliament led to the civil war with Cromwell and his eventual execution. He remains to be one of the most interesting figure in the history of English politics. And on the subject of central figure in politics, we see the birth of, we record the birth in 1805, on this day, the 19th of November 1805, of Ferdinand de Lesseps, diplomat and engineer who supervised the construction of the Suez Canal. It would be his work that would pave the way for one of the most significant waterways in the, recorded history of waterways. And of course, it would be one of the biggest hotbeds of tension in the period that is regarded as the peak of the Cold War. And it would lead to the Suez Crisis. And so Ferdinand de Lesseps goes down in history for that. And, of course, the fact that he was responsible for the construction of the Panama Canal and was prosecuted for embezzling funds. And lastly, in the section of historical characters, we record the birth of James Garfield, 20th US President from 1881, who was assassinated 3 months later after he had come into the Oval Office. And finally, in 1917, Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister of India, former Prime Minister of India, daughter of the most famous Prime Minister of India and first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, who served as Prime Minister from 1966 to 77, and then again from 1980 to 84, would be born on this day. She remains to be a controversial figure in Indian history. While she is remembered for some of her roles as an influential leader who put India on a path to progress and prosperity, she is also remembered for some of her more controversial actions against the Sikh community in India, among other things, including but not limited to when in 1975 her election to parliament was declared void and a state of emergency was declared by her government while she was still in office. And that would remain to be one of India's darkest chapters in politics. Nevertheless, she is remembered as a central figure in Indian political history. And unfortunately, on this day, in 1828, Franz Schubert, prolific Austrian composer, would pass away from typhus. Schubert's work is still loved as it was in his day, today by the classical music fans and community of the world. His death would subsequently be mourned. And finally, in 1988, Christina Onassis, US born daughter of the Greek shipping magnate Aristotle Onassis, died of a heart attack aged only 37 in Argentina. And on that unfortunate note, we conclude today's headlines of the day. You were watching and listening to Historian Radio's Echoes of the News, and I am Muhammad Hussain Qazi. And these were today's headlines as history first heard them. Good night.